Hey, U.S. History students, today we're going to be talking about something called American imperialism. This is going to be the United States pushing out forward into the world, taking over territory, taking over other areas, and gaining world power. So if you take a look at this picture here, this is Colombia. She's kind of the representation of the United States here. She's got her stars and her stripes, and she's trying on her new hat, her new bonnet here, and it says world power, and out here it says expansion. And she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she likes what she sees. And so this is going to be the United States growing in power after the Spanish-American War. So we've already talked about the Spanish-American War, talked about the United States gaining those possessions from Spain, and this is the United States really coming out on the world stage and taking part in world affairs. So before we go any further, let's understand what imperialism is. Another term you may see is called expansionism. Expansionism is kind of the more politically correct term in today's society, or the term that Texas wants us to use, because it is the United States expanding out into the world. Now, imperialism or expansionism is going to be extending the country's power in some way, whether that's through making treaties and a diplomatic effort, or whether it's using military force, taking over another country's territory with your military and exerting your force and power over it. So when you own colonies, you control another country, another territory, another part of the world. That is imperialism, that is expansionism. And the U.S. jumps into the imperialistic efforts through the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the United States defeats Spain and takes possession of their former colonies. Now, there's colonies in the Pacific Ocean, like the Philippines and Guam. There's also colonies in areas in the Caribbean, like Cuba and Puerto Rico. And once the United States takes control of these territories, now we've got to figure out what to do with them. There are people that think that the United States needs these territories to become a great power in the world, to help ourselves out, to gain natural resources. These people are called imperialists. They want imperialism. They want to expand. And then there's people that say this is not fair. This is not what the United States should be doing. We are a country that believes in freedom and democracy, and for us to have power over other areas, that doesn't jive real well. These people are called anti-imperialists. They believe that the United States should not be an imperialistic power and should not expand. I talked about some of the arguments that imperialists made on the last slide, but we're going to go into more detail here. So the first thing is going to be need for raw materials, need for markets. The United States is rapidly expanding. The United States is, at this time, building up industry, and industries need raw materials and need raw resources. And some of these places that the United States is taking over and controlling has great resources and great materials. This would greatly help the United States industry, help us expand, help our economy. This would be a good thing, they said. Second, strategic reasons. We're becoming a big country. We're becoming powerful in the world. We need to be able to defend ourselves against our enemies, and having naval bases around the world on these different islands throughout the Pacific and the Caribbean and other places is going to be a good thing. We're going to be able to have our military out there in the world and be able to defend ourselves better. The third would just be nationalism or pride, the belief that the United States is superior, the belief that having colonies would show the world how great we are, would give us a greater standing in the world. And so that belief of superiority leads to nationalism and leads to pride. And then attitudes towards other people. Many Americans believe that we are superior, we should rule others, and even the progressives that wanted to help others, they still want to spread religion, send missionaries, civilize others is what they would say, by Americanizing them. These are all arguments for expansion. One of the key leaders for expansionism or imperialism during this time is a guy named Alfred Thayer Mahan. He was a Navy guy. He was one of the leading voices to try to get the United States to expand. And his belief was, if we're going to be a strong country, a powerful country, we need a strong Navy. We've got oceans surrounding us. We're going to need to be able to move our Navy around the country and around the world quickly, and we're going to need naval bases to supply that Navy. He was also one of the key leaders in voicing support for a canal through Panama. If we have military over here, we have Navy military over here, we need to get it back and forth across these oceans quickly to get out to the Philippines, to get over to the Caribbean, different parts of the world. And so we're going to need to expand and be able to move quickly through the world. And so a Panama Canal is needed. Now, on the other side of the argument, there are what we call anti-imperialists. These are Americans that do not want to expand our power around the world by taking over other territories and countries. One of their arguments was that the United States, we were colonies at one time. We didn't like how we were being ruled, and we fought and gained our independence. And so why are we imposing that on someone else? Second, they would say it just plain, flat out violates our basic democratic principles. We believe in self-government. We believe in people being able to be free to choose their own government and their own rule of law, yet we are going to force our type of government and our rules on other people that may not want them. So opposition rose in 1898 and after the U.S. gained colonies. One group was called the American Anti-Imperialist League, but the imperialists overall won out, and the United States did gain a colonial empire. That included the Philippines, Guam, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Samoa, and Midway. Cuba was the exception. Cuba was a Spanish territory, but after the United States won the Spanish-American War, Cuba was given its independence. But when they were given their independence, it was kind of a conditional independence. We said, we will give you your independence if you create a constitution that includes what's known as the Platt Amendment. The Platt Amendment to the Cuban Constitution gives the United States the right to intervene in Cuban affairs at any time. So it's almost like your parents telling you, yeah, you can go use the car, but only if you do this and you follow my rules. And so it's almost like the United States is the parent, Cuba is the teenager borrowing the car. After the United States gained all the different territories, you can see all the different territories out here in the Pacific Ocean. All these in red are going to be U.S. possessions. The Philippines right here, they were greatly disappointed. They were under Spanish control, and when the United States started fighting Spain in the Spanish-American War, the Filipinos fought on the sides of the Americans against the Spanish. They felt like if the United States won, they would be given their freedom. That didn't happen. The Philippine Islands were actually taken over and annexed by the United States, and they were not granted independence. And so those rebels that were fighting on the side of the United States against Spain turned against the United States and fought the U.S. forces until finally the U.S. defeated the Filipino forces in 1902. Hawaii is also going to be another possession that the U.S. takes control of, although it's at a different time than the Spanish-American War. This is going to be a little bit different of a situation. So for a long time, the Americans have used Hawaii as a refueling station. It's there in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's a great place to stop when you're heading to and from Asia. And over time, Americans settled there, moved there, took advantage of what can be grown there, started building sugar and pineapple plantations. Missionaries moved there over time to try to convert the natives to Christianity. And these landowners gained more and more power in Hawaii and began to take over the island a little bit. Now, the queen of the island, the native ruler, Queen Liliuokalani, she did not like that American businesses were beginning to take over her island, and she begins to try to fight to take political power back. In response to this, the Americans push back against the Queen, and they kind of battle over this land, and ultimately they overthrow the native government and take control. It was then led by a guy named Sanford B. Dole. He led the government in Hawaii, basically becomes the president of Hawaii, while they try to get annexed by the United States. So the goal is to become part of the United States. Well, President Cleveland at the beginning refused to annex Hawaii because the way in which power was seized, he felt like that did not look good, that Americans moved there, took over the island, and now they're going to be annexed by the United States. That just didn't look good to the world. And so at first he kind of resisted. But after the Spanish-American War, and now that we're taking on all these other colonies, the United States Congress votes that, hey, we're going to annex Hawaii as well and bring in them as part of the fold, as part of the U.S. territories in 1898.